Guys, we want to welcome you guys to kind of our first Attktx meeting. We want to kind of go through some of our new products. We've been working on AUTOCOCKER stuff. Josh and I have been working very hard. I mean, if we're not on meetings, we're texting, we're calling each other. I mean, we're just doing a ton of different stuff, and we just appreciate all you guys' support. We've got some cool stuff going on product-wise. So just a couple little housekeeping things. We really appreciate all the AUTOCOCKER gawking guys. They came out with this new long sleeve tech tee. Joshua, I still got to ship you yours. But anyways, these will be really cool to play in and wear. So, that's a great group, a great bunch of guys. Definitely go support those guys. So Headband Hero wise, Headband Heroes, they just need to be engraved as far as on the inside rollers. So Attktx has to be engraved on those. So those are wrapping up, and then of course we'll go to anodize. The twister order's in, so that's fantastic. We've been getting a lot of questions from the twister guys lately, so that's pretty cool. And then of course we've got all these brand new AUTOCOCKER parts that we're working on, and a lot of these things are ideas that we've been working on, and of course we'll start prototyping this stuff very shortly and start kind of going through it. And it's been great to get your guys' feedback. And Joshua, do you want to walk through the prototypes that you have? We wanted to show you guys a couple other prototypes that we have.
Yeah, sure. So again, I think it already pictured the 2-port gold chamber, I guess is what we're calling it, right? 2-port gold chamber. So this will work for anybody that wants to. Oh, great! It's going to blur out.
No, you had it. You had it there.
Anybody that wants to bore their 2K spec bodies to 11/16, this will allow you to do that and run similar to like what we say, like meteor spec kind of design. And then so they're almost done with production on that too, right, Gant?
Well, we haven't started production on that yet. Somebody was asking.
Gotcha.
I think Matthew was asking what time frame, but I'd probably say maybe a month and a half to a month.
Oh, that's right. That's right. On this one.
Yeah, I think we're only going to make maybe 100, 125, something like that. So they'll be a little bit more limited. But kind of like you were saying, Joshua, if you wanted to, you could also take a pre-2K and open up the other hole on the bottom port for the VASA if you wanted to run the dual port. But
with those ones, you could just run either our pre-2K or 99 spec gold chamber or our 2K spec gold chamber. So again, that allows you to increase the volume of the gun, gives you all the benefits of how assembly or disassembly, the advantages of not all the gold chamber perks, right? If you strip something, you just replace the chamber or rotate it, because we have multiple thread positions, I guess you could say.
Yep. And not pictured there, that will also come with a spring perch as well. And one other side note on that is you can't do the window on that because we've moved the position of the O-ring.
So do I have a gold? Yeah, I've got one second. A gold chamber here too. We can compare them.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah, so really we'll have pre-2K, 2K, and then 2K dual port. So one of the main reasons we made the 2K dual port is because we had a lot of people reach out to us and wanted to do the gold chamber mod, but had the two ports. And the problem was before that O-ring would be right over the second port on the WGP bodies, so it wouldn't work. So you can see we've actually moved the O-ring to a thin metric O-ring, so that's going to be able to seal it.
Yeah, you can see where the O-ring lands. Gosh dang it.
That's nice. It's decent enough.
Gotcha. Yeah. What else? Or I can throw them up on the screen too if you want, Gant.
That's okay. I think that's pretty good. What else do you have in front of you there?
So I have our low pressure chamber, the Attktx version, not the twister version.
Yep.
Test fitting some stuff and whatnot. Finding out that we can get silly with these later on. I'll let Gant tell you about that if he wants. But
I'll tell you that LPC, the chamber on that thing's huge.
Yeah.
So
old school Shock Tech LPC kind of size.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll show you guys here. This is actually the twister prototype front block screw as well as the LPC. Pretty freaking cool, man. I mean, this is just a really cool piece to look at in person. But yeah, so we were fortunate enough to work with Anthony and Austin at Committed Paintball at Twister, and just been a really cool project, as well as working with Mozak. But this particular piece right here, we did a lot of really cool stuff with this. As far as and we'll kind of walk you guys through why we designed it the way that it is. This is actually well, for the twister, we're going to call it the twister vortex, but it's the LPC Gemini. And the reason that we named it the Gemini is actually because this front block screw also takes this little plug here. And so basically the same plug that also plugs the front of the front block screw also plugs the front of the LPC. So kind of it has a dual purpose. And one of the main reasons we wanted to do that is because, you know, not everybody likes an LPC, and, you know, the ones that do, basically we wanted a super clean front block that you could put this plug in so you could run it that way if you want, or you could obviously throw on an LPC at any time without having to buy two separate screws, right? So that's kind of one of the really cool things there. They're all broached inside. So they'll all use the same Allen key. So you'll basically just, chances are when you remove it, you'll probably be able to remove both of these at once. Both these pieces will come together because the O-ring fits pretty tight on these. And then otherwise you'll just come into here through the front block, unscrew this, and then of course you'll take off your front block. But Joshua and I did a lot of time and a lot of math on the ports for this. And actually, we think we're going to have the highest flowing front block screw on the market.
The port size bigger than anything that we've measured or compared against. So
see if I can get a kind of
theoretically that means more airflow. So anybody that's running your minis or your extended reaches, this will help flow through the regulator into the gun and whatnot. Yeah.
So a lot of cool other stuff. We're working on tons of stuff. We're learning a lot too. Joshua and I, we've been working on this for, I don't know if it's been 2.5 years now. I don't know exactly, somewhere in that ballpark.
3 now.
Yeah. So we've been working on a lot of stuff behind
4 months. It'll be 3 years in like 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
That's insane. But, you know, a lot of big projects that we're working on. And like I said, really, you guys, it doesn't, you know, none of this means anything without you guys. So, you know, all the love that you guys have shown us has been absolutely awesome. This is, you know, obviously we love paintball. Paintball's been such a big part of our lives. And so it's just really cool to do this. But let's go into some new AUTOCOCKER parts.
While we're on Twister, do you want to talk about the Twister cocking rod?
Okay. So, a lot of things that sparked, obviously we've talked about a lot of AUTOCOCKER parts. And another side note, it's been super cool to see what's happened with the Delta ZFR. We spent a ton of time on the Delta ZFR. Hopefully we can kind of walk you guys through some of the cool stories about developing that. But really, you know, because Anthony sold the twisters and body kits, there was a lot of opportunity to make other parts. And really his vision was more so for people to kind of build it how they wanted to build it. So we wanted to kind of be able to have a couple other parts that people could add to their builds and of course, you know, choose what they wanted. But so what we did was we also worked on a cocking rod that's perfectly matched to the same twist as the LPZ. And if I didn't already shout out Mozak Justin, I mean, Justin's been really cool to work with. Justin is very talented. What else? Okay, so the other big thing too is we wanted to make a beaver tail. Because the beaver tail, Justin has his frame that has the integrated base. You can just screw it right in. I don't think anybody sells a beaver tail that is, I'm not sure how many people is actually 10/32. Maybe the new die one. I don't know if it's the same diameter. It might be smaller.
Obviously, Attktx is. The old cap ones were. CCM did the same method. Off the top of my head, I'm sure there's probably others, but
yeah. So basically, we started to talk about all sorts of stuff, and then it kind of was like, hey, if we're going to make a beaver tail, if we're going to make a cocking rod, well, we got to make a beaver tail. If we're going to make a beaver tail, well, we have to have a pump arm. If we're going to make a pump arm, you know, we've got to have, you know, this and that. So
yeah, the one we haven't hit is I won't say it. I don't need him knocking down there. We haven't made an actuating rod yet.
Yeah, we have. We got some things going for the actuating rod. Back to what I was saying about the Delta ZFR. I think one other product that we've gotten a lot of interest from is, I'm sorry if I didn't explain this earlier, but people really like the Delta ZFR concept. It works fantastic in the gunfighter. It's just a drop-in, just high-performance trigger. But we really have a lot of people saying, hey, can you adapt this to a 2K? And we've bounced around some of the ideas. We've designed a little bit on it. We haven't actually gone down that path, you know, 100% yet. But I would say that's probably one of the biggest products that people are wanting us to try and make. But so we have a lot of AUTOCOCKER parts that we're working on and have been working on. But what I'm trying to lead into is more so about the three-ways. So I'd say pneumatic wise, the three-way was probably one of the earlier designs that we worked on.
Yeah. I mean, not as we probably worked on 3 or 4, 5 things before that. That were like, maybe we need. We're being
that's the hard
too ambitious with this one. Let's step back a little bit.
100%. That's very true. Well, the hard part too is how, trying to, we're learning a lot, like we said, as far as like what to release. And of course, like one part is great on its own, but you couple in another great part and then, they can, obviously increase the performance. So one of our goals has always been to have a really high performing trigger as far as the autococker wise that works very well with the three-way. Right. And anyways, we'll probably, I don't know, are we going to walk through some of the other designs as well? Kind of just
whatever we want to do.
So what do you want to start? You want to start with the three-ways or you want to start with the rods? It's your call, Joshua.
Let's start. I mean, the rods will be quick. Let's just go through
those. Let's do the rods.
Okay. You want me to pull them up?
Yeah, if you want to present on your screen.
Individually, or do you want everything?
Whatever's easier. Yeah, let's do individually. That way it'll be easier just to kind of focus on it.
So I have the cocking rod up. Well, here, let me just open these other ones.
We'll have to figure out some kind of names for everything. But what we tried to do was do a lot of little unique details in every one of these parts. And that's really kind of one thing that we want to be known for is put as many little details into these, products that we can. And of course, all the stuff.
I was going to say, really think through design and really 100%. Address any aspect, challenge, perk, drawback. Just make a fully rounded, fully flushed out design is kind of what we do with everything.
And the hard part with that is obviously the more time you sink into this, the more little things that you touch on, it's obviously the cost and all these different things are affected by it. But, we kind of, and I know it sounds kind of cliche, but we talk about, basically Attktx in a sense. One of the ideas is to attack the designs, right? And from all angles, right? So
you want to go ahead and share it?
Yeah, go ahead. You can present it on your screen, Joshua.
So here's the cocking rod. It's good to go again?
Yep, looks good. Awesome. So basically,
yeah.
Go ahead, Joshua. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
Oh yeah. So like we said, we try to address every cool feature, every thing that we thought might make a better product. This one obviously we have the twister version of what's shown, but we also have our Attktx version right there, with just some different cosmetic milling in essence. But
I really like that design. I think it looks slick.
Yeah, I think it will give you a good purchase on the knob to thread it in and out of the gun. Other design features we threw in here. We're going to reduce the diameter of the shaft, just save weight. Why not, right? We threw in a whole feature for tightening or loosening either the rod out of the gun or getting the knob off the gun. Give you something to engage, to put a tool in essence, so you can get it apart. We also spent some time thinking about the bumper.
The bumper's cool.
Yeah, so we integrated our bumper into the knob itself. So Gant
can you
go ahead?
I'm sorry, Joshua. There you go. Yeah, so people can. There you go.
Yeah, Gant has a bit of a pet peeve when it comes to bumpers floating around. So we interlocked the bumper into the knob itself, so it actually won't ride on the OD of the sorry, pups are going crazy.
Attktx employees.
Yeah, the house guard dog barks at everything not important. But anyway, so yeah, anything you want to touch on, Gant?
Well, I just want to kind of add some other things. So, for me and my experience with, building autocockers and cocking rods, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the same thing. Like, here's a couple other things too. So let's just talk about the knob itself. There's a couple of different ways to lock the knob on the shaft itself, right? We didn't want to affect the aesthetics of the knob, so we didn't come in with a side set screw. We kind of just stayed traditional and had the locking set screw from the inside. That was kind of one big thing, especially because, a lot of people, when we started designing the twister knob, that was, we didn't want to come in with a set screw in the side of that really cool twister milling, right? So that kind of led to that decision. And as we've talked about, once you lock that thing down with a good set screw, I don't think we've had any trouble with it, right?
Plus, there's the added benefit. You don't mar the threads on the rod by doing the cross-drilled set screw, right? If you over-tighten
100%.
it, and then you want to adjust it when you put it on your next gun, or whatever the reason is, right? And the threads are damaged, and it chews up the aluminum. If it's an aluminum knob or stainless, it just
100%.
binds up and you never get it off.
That's exactly right. A couple autocockers down the road and everything's all torn up, right? And you know that. I mean, some of those aluminum knobs, you can feel them, they start to strip out a little. The other thing too is with really putting the hole for the access. I mean, how many of you guys have had a really tight cocking rod into the hammer, and then basically you try and pull that thing out, and next thing you know, the knob comes off, but the shaft doesn't. You don't want to go in there with pliers. Obviously, we came through with the side hole. We could have done flats as well. We just I didn't. What are people going to have at the field, right? They're going to have an Allen key at least, right? Some people maybe not have an adjustable wrench. So we did that. But as far as the bumper goes, how many of you guys have seen guns where the bumpers are just kind of flailing back and forth? They've either been, wallowed out or they're not the right size. So the idea was to basically snap fit it in there to where it was integrated in with the knob so that instead of, and here's the other thing, when you adjust that thing backwards, you then got to scoot the bumper back. And then, of course, forwards, when you're trying to do it, you can feel the resistance. But I think another big thing that we wanted to do too, Joshua, was, you have this beautiful knob, it's anodized, you have this really cool gun, and then you've got this rubber piece that's so large sitting right there. We wanted to really make it, you can see it kind of steps down. So anyways, we have a prototype, some samples of the bumper coming. So we'll have to, we want that fit to be that nice, real snap in. But we'll have to make sure that part is dialed in. One last thing, the shafts right there, a lot of people were kind of confused. They saw this, this black color, assumed that we were going to do aluminum. We are weighing stainless steel with different coatings. We're also weighing titanium with maybe black anodize. Obviously electrically done. We're looking at some different stuff. As far as the knob here, I think twister wise, we're going to make the twister knob in aluminum. So that way they can come raw so people can match it to their project. I think as far as our Attktx knob here, we'll probably do this in aluminum. I think also a stainless would be cool. Or I'm sorry, titanium, depending on kind of, we've got to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to get in some exotic materials in a number of our products. So titaniums, carbons, sky's the limit, really. Whatever is kind of cool or adds some performance benefit, possibly.
Yeah. Weight, strength, anodizing. I mean, all those things are obviously cool things. So anyways, that kind of explains the cocking rod, which, like I said, I think that's a pretty cool piece.
Here's the next one in line, no particular order.
That's fine. So beaver tail wise, obviously this started with the inception of kind of the twister. So we're kind of weighing if, we sell this thing with the base or without the base. The problem for us is if a lot of the twister guys want this, depending on what happens, we may have, bases and not bases, but we'll have to see. But we kept it kind of straightforward with the base. It has 2 locking set screws on the bottom. I think that was, something that Dye did. That having one at least, I think you guys all know, if you hit that beaver tail, it'll move. I think that if we could have, we would have made a more non-marring solution, but really, I don't know. There's only so much you can do with this little space here.
Yeah. And we kind of followed some of the design cues from the cocking rod as well, where we stepped the shaft down from kind of your standard 3/16 down to not quite 1/8 of an inch. But again, just because we could, we reduce some weight, make it look aesthetically appealing, added the same kind of tightening and loosening feature.
Yep.
And then yeah.
Well, even too, most of these are going to be Loctited, right? Even you guys know how it is. I mean, let's say that you had both ends Loctited, and if you've ever messed with any of the other the beaver tails, let's say you turn that one end, and next thing you know, that comes off. Well, what's your other thing? You've got to get a soft jaw vise. Well, actually, we see a lot of people that don't use something soft jaw, and then of course they have all the marks on it. But
yeah, everybody calls them.
Yeah, the idiot marks, which of course You got to learn somewhere, and I'm
Sometimes it
sure we've
happens. Yeah. I'm
I'm
sure
sure
all
we've
of our
all done
first autocockers are. Actually, I tracked down my first autococker. My brother still has it. I got to get it back from him. But
Does it really?
yeah, it's interesting because I was taking a machining course when I got that. So I actually,
what was it? You told me about it before. Was it a side feed or what was it?
it was a 97 side feed, mini side feed. And then I, like say, I
Was it factory mini or was it
factory
did you,
mini.
okay.
Yeah, it was. So that was the first year they were supposed to be out of the box ready. but I, like say, I was taking a machining course. So I wound up machining, like CNC machining around the top tube and windowing underneath the rail and through the. Did I go through the body? I'll have to find some pictures of it, but
you definitely need to rebuild that one for sure.
Yeah. But,
I would say the other thing about this particular, I think in a perfect world, just in a kind of OCD meticulous design world, we'd love to have all these holes for removal lined up, but we'll have to kind of see how those. There might be some things we can do in there, like we were talking about, but yeah. So beaver tail wads for the actual tail. I think it's a cool little design. It's simple. It's actually smaller than it appears, but yeah, we're interested. Really excited to get a prototype of this as well.
You want to jump into the pump arm next?
Yep. Now, let me say one thing about this. We didn't show this, but there's a lot of other pump arms. So we've got what? Full size, mini,
yep. Mini,
and
mid block,
half block, mid block. Was there a mid block and a half block? I think there's just mid block right now.
I think they use the same length. I use the same length. On my builds, I've always used the same one. I'm sure there's some variation. There's some combination that probably wouldn't work.
Right.
But most of the ones I've seen, I think all the mid blocks and half blocks use the same. Obviously, again, a lot of variables. What's the size of the sled? How is the bolt held?
Right.
Yeah, who knows?
Hopefully, one of the features that we are going to explain in here might help with that a little bit. But you want to walk them through this because there's a lot of little details in this that are kind of not seen unless you pay attention to it.
So yeah, one of the big things was we want to carry over the thinner diameter through the rod like we did on the cocking rod and the beaver tail. The problem was we didn't think it would be realistic to turn down a 3/16 steel rod down to whatever, 140, just over 1/8 diameter. So what we opted to do is to start with a smaller stock, thread the ends the same as your ram, which I believe is 632 off the top of my head.
Some of them 6/32.
Yeah.
Most of them, I'd say.
Which is the same thread that obviously our coupler here goes or threads with the ram. Throw a cross section up here, and we kind of, well, at least I like the multi-piece designs of the cocking rods out there without the bends. I mean, the bends work, but in my mind they seem less precise. Like trying to get, I'm sure good manufacturers make a good rod. There's several out there.
For sure.
But I've known, like in the past, I've used some not so great rods that aren't
that the manual bend in it was a little off.
Yeah, they weren't exactly parallel, the two bends, so like your rod would stick off funny angles, and I don't know. But in my mind,
there's also a lot of things there that could be. I mean, it could be a ram shaft. It could be. You're right. I mean,
well, you might wind up bending your ram shaft if your rod's not
true
accurate, right? So you start flexing the ram, maybe that induces a leak, or trying to get it into the back block. Plus, there's just lots of things. I personally like the multi-piece design, and again, because we were doing a smaller shaft, we decided to do the back threaded section in a separate piece as well. So it's kind of a modular design. So that'll allow us all our 3 different lengths will be just the straight rod. Can I show that? Yeah, I can show that.
There were a lot of other considerations. Obviously, the stock material that we start with, as Josh was showing here, right? We can, instead of turning this entire thing down, stepping it down like we did the other designs, you can start with a smaller stock. You can, turn down the ends, and of course, but also a couple other things that we wanted to do is, I think both of us like the coupler at the front, like CCM, AKA. They did some really cool stuff with that. I think it's going to be really great to get one of these prototypes, and kind of like you were saying, Joshua, because we're using a smaller shaft. That piece is probably going to be smaller than what you remember, right? Like just in general, like, because remember, we're talking about 6/32 as opposed to 10/32, the standard, right?
Yes, the shaft so your standard ram shaft in essence, right? So it's skinnier shaft, and then the coupler itself will be the diameter of a typical rod. So One thing
Correct.
Gan pointed out, will we have any clearance issues? No, this will be in essence the same diameter as a regular pump arm, so you shouldn't have any. Theoretically, shouldn't have any interference issues.
Hopefully, and you know, that's kind of some of the things I was looking at. People would say like they like this particular design, but depending on the gun and the milling and different things, like those thicker kind of couplers up front there could kind of rub the body. So that's one thing that we're looking at. And you know, that's a great point too. Same kind of thing on the back end. But I think the coolest thing and what I'm most excited. Well, go ahead, Joshua. You want to walk through the front, and then we can go to the back.
Yeah. So like Gant said, the AKA, it had access to a locking screw, right? So you didn't have to necessarily Loctite your ram in. You could thread in, adjust it perfectly, and then you could lock down the screw and then fine tune it later. I like that. I don't like having
that was a super cool feature, and I can't believe the only thing that I can think that was not carried over is just more operations. That's the only reason that I can.
Yeah, it's harder to make. Well, it's not harder. It's more work to make, to create it, right? Like you have more machining ops. There's more, whether you're machining it or whether it's like the AK one that was brazed together. It's more pieces. It's just more work to do it, right?
Do you remember when you locked down that coupler being just fine? I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, I don't
no
know if
Loctite.
I've ever had any problem. Like I told Gant, my stuff never has a chance to get loose because I'm always taking it apart.
There you go.
But to be fair, I mean, if you're the person that sets it and doesn't mess with it, then they could probably give you better feedback than I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't recall ever having set screws backing out. But it's just like anything. Like you forget to tighten something, or if it's one that doesn't have some kind of locking feature, you forgot to Loctite it, and it comes. Call out.
Was that
his gun fell apart at the tournament?
Joshua, was the AKA from both directions as well? I can't remember. I know they did one that locked the ram shaft. Did they also lock the pump arm?
No, because it was one piece.
Well, okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to, right? Because it was just threaded into it, or it was.
Right.
Yeah, there was no thread in it because it was just brazed to the one that had the threaded piece. Actually, I've got one.
I got it. Anyways, the cool thing about this one as well is you're going to have. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. That's what I was confused about. That one piece was a solid piece, and then so super cool things is you're not only going to have a set screw from this direction, you're also going to have a locking set screw from this direction. So basically, you're going to be able to, if you need to, we really have the adjustment for the pump arm hopefully built in on the back end, but there could be a little bit of adjustment that you need here. You can lock that, and then of course you could also lock the ram shaft.
Yeah. So most cases, we're thinking you're just going to thread the shaft into the coupler, Loctite it, and you're done. But if you needed just a teeny bit longer assembly, theoretically, you could back the pump arm itself out of the body, and then we're going to provide it with another set screw up here, so you could lock the assembly if you needed to, or Loctite it however you want it. But you could grow the assembly maybe a couple or a couple tenths of an inch at most, I would guess. I don't know. It's an option there, but we're hoping that the overall length will be close enough that everything will work.
One other detail I want to point out on the front side there, Joshua, is how we opened up the front side of that set screw hole so that you weren't just running with a thread all the way through.
So you'll get a nice clean bore, drop the set screw in before the threads start. You're not trying to thread into an angled surface.
And
so the threads in essence will start here.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just to let you guys know as well, as far as on these components, we're going to go into the back end here, but same thing, shaft wise, stainless steel, titanium, we're looking at those options. Couplers on both ends, we're looking at everything from 70-75 aluminum to stainless steel, titanium as well. Maybe we'll have a little bit of both, right? There's people who like a little bit. I mean, one cool thing about having this, like Joshua was saying, is really the ability to customize and anodize. Like that's going to be a really cool feature to do. But then again, some people may like more of a bulletproof option where they can basically set it and kind of forget it, right?
Yeah, so like Gant pointed out earlier, the black, we're thinking either stainless or titanium with some kind of a black coating is kind of where we're going with that. You don't see a lot of black. Well, it's been done, black hardware and things like that, but it'd be cool.
Cerakote, I know some people. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Some people have done like Cerakote and different stuff like that, powder coat. But I don't think anybody has had access to either, and of course these will come in stainless as well. I'm sorry, excuse me, just raw stainless. But I don't think anybody has had kind of like factory access to kind of like, who knows? There's other color options we could do as well. But
yeah. Well, especially with titanium, you've got your blues, your purples, your greens, your golds, all the colors you can.
We just have to see if we can afford to make it, and if people will be willing to purchase it. But
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of people were very interested in the pump arm, which is pretty cool. We got a lot of questions about the pump arm. I would say my favorite feature about this pump arm is the back end here, and it's kind of like a obviously we were paying attention to the diameter of the actual shaft itself and not having to turn it completely down. But something that I noticed with building autocockers is that, and you can see this with people doing them as well, unless that pump arm is perfect, and it depends on the back block, right? So if you've got a stock WGP that has more full length threads, if you've got a very short P block, if you've got it depends on how many threads. And what I always found was you either ended up with too short of threads or too many threads and this thing's sticking through. Our hope is that this piece, when it's fully tightened down, is going to be very close to what the perfect autococker length is for the pump arm, but you have a little bit of micro adjustment if you need to get those rest of the threads or come back, to get that perfect, just right at flush at the back block. So you maximize the full thread. You're not going to maybe encourage more stripping and whatnot, as long as you have it set up correctly. But now, Joshua, do you want to kind of walk them through kind of how we're doing this piece here?
Sure. As far as the machining or how it assembles?
A little bit of both, and how you would actually use it as well.
Yeah. So like Ant said earlier, hopefully just the assembled length is going to be ideal for 99% of people out there. But for the few out there, we're going to have another set screw that will probably pre-assembled, threaded in. Obviously, you can't thread all the way through because we broached the back to give you another option or place to put a tool to hold it while you're tightening, loosening, getting it out of a back block. Or we're trying to think about all the scenarios, like, all right, if you're assembling it this way or that way, or this is stuck in apart. We try to went through, putting together, taking apart what's the best way.
Well, I think one thing that's awesome about that, Joshua, is ideally, imagine so you set this thing up in the back block, then you come through. I can't remember what broach we did on the back. I think it's small. It's like 5/64, or I can't remember what it was. But anyways, so imagine you put this pump arm through the back block, and then basically you'll put the Allen key and you'll walk it back, and then you can lock it. Now to do the set screw, we've got to install the set screw from the front side.
It'll drop in the front. Yeah, that's what we're saying. Because of this broach back here for a tool, the set screw can't come all the way through. You can see the kind of the major diameter of the threads here would be this outside edge. If we were to run the thread all the way through, you couldn't have the broach back here. So it'll be partially threaded. There'll be a set screw in here so you can lock it or just Loctite it in general. And then, like I said, we have the broach in the back for adjusting it. Also, if you have a back block that doesn't have the hole all the way through, you put flats up here, 3/16 flats as well. So if you need to unscrew it out of a block and didn't want to just grab it with vice grips or something, you could put an adjustable wrench or a very small box end wrench on there to tighten or loosen the assembly. But
right,
do we have everything, or did I forget something?
No, I think that's pretty good there. Of course, we're working on prototypes of all of this stuff. Obviously we want to make sure that everything is, bulletproof, foolproof, and works as intended. I think there's some really, really cool ideas in these pieces, and I think that as far as customization wise, this could be a really, really cool piece. I'm excited to see how light these things are, and of course, we've got to do a lot of robust testing on everything. But I think this is going to be a really cool piece.
Cool. What do you want to jump to next?
Let's see here. What else do we have? Let's
Beaver Beaver tail, pump arm.
Let's so do you want to go through the initial three-way designs?
Sure. Do you want to look at greatest, or do you want to go back in time to our first concept?
Yeah, go back in time, and we'll kind of just walk through,
So this is probably the third or fourth thing we designed.
Yeah.
But the intention was to minimize. I mean, three-ways have gotten really good, so there's not really a lot of drag in them like they were back in the day. But we were looking at current valves and some of the mech guns and things like that, and a lot of them had a pin design versus an O-ring shaft. So we were thinking we could reduce drag,
Fixed position O-rings with a
Yeah.
inside shaft riding on the ID as opposed to kind of a larger OD.
So reduce drag and hopefully reduce the amount of travel required to cycle the gun. And this was kind of our first design where it had a stack of spools with inside and outside O-rings. It's all retained with a set screw in the front here. We also looked at, with the innovations of AUTOCOCKERs, lightweight hammers, lightweight springs. Now you're able to reduce your cocking pressures down. We looked at opening up, going to larger size pneumatic hose and larger size barbs. So again, with that lower pressure to get higher cycling speeds, we wanted to open everything up so you had good flow all the way from your LPR through the three-way and into the ram.
Side note on that, Joshua, I actually, when I was looking back through everything, I actually looked up the numbers that we ran on that. So actually so as Joshua was saying, we basically designed our own barb, right? So much larger. Instead of having the hex on the outside, they're actually internally broached. We're probably, and just a side note, we're probably going to run that broach if we can just a little bit further deep. So if worst case scenario, you were to snap one of these off, you could actually still get in there to remove it without having to kind of get a, and
really we can probably broach them fully through, right?
Sure. So numbers wise, this is actually, so we're stepping up from, what's the AUTOCOCKER hose? 1/16th, 1/8
ID.
I think it's 1/16th ID, 1/8 OD. Anyways, this is bumping up to 5/32 OD and 3/32 ID. And if I'm not mistaken, when we kind of ran the two, you're going to get a 40% increase in flow, right? Or at least that's the intention. So
the orifice size is 40% bigger. Flow, well, we don't have the software.
Well, right. So, and we were talking about this too, Joshua, like kind of having revisit. It's always nice when you revisit things, but sometimes you have a little bit of a fresh perspective. I'm pretty sure that instead of that little chamfer we were talking about putting at the base there, we also wanted it very clean, right? Like I said, there's no hexes on top. It's super simple. It's internally broached to remove it or whatnot. We looked at doing a little O-ring there for a sealing surface, but I think that just some kind of like purple Loctite, it'll be very simple.
Yeah, I was always a big fan of, I think ANS offered an O-ring barb, so you didn't have to, you just thread them on and they'd seal.
Was it an O-ring or did it have like a little washer?
No, it was an O-ring. There were some that had washers, but there was a time there was, I bought a bunch of them. I've got like not that many, maybe a dozen
of them. A real small one?
Yeah, they're small. They have an O-ring in them. I keep moving them from build to build because I'm like, I'm not getting rid of these barbs. I just have to tighten them down. They're sealed. But I would love to have done an O-ring in there. There just wasn't the real estate.
That's right.
With the 1032 thread. Well, and again, it has to do with how close the barbs are. So, looking back at this, maybe we could do something, but yeah.
That brings up a good point, Joshua, that you said. So yeah, we're talking about a barb that's 10/32 threaded. The reason that we did that as well, not only for the increased flow, but we also want to sell these so that you have to. Basically, you would be able to buy a kit with the three-way, and that you'll be able to put it on the front and rear of your ram as well as your LPR so that all the hoses are consistent.
Now you could put regular 10/32 barbs on this, run the smaller hose if you wanted to. But the idea is with our three-way, you'd get 3 extra barbs. You put them in, like Gant said, you put them in the ram and the LPR, and then you have maximized flow all the way from the LPR through the ram, in and out, right? So again, with those lower pressures, like back in the day, I always found the smaller mini rams cycled quicker. That's because they ran at a higher pressure. So if you run at a lower pressure, you want to open everything up so you get better flow through it. Look at all these guns that are open up chasing, the sub 200 operating pressures on AUTOCOCKERs, right? They're usually, you're opening up the bolt, you're opening up the valve, all those kinds of things.
I wanted to point out a couple other cool things that we had here. I can't remember. I mean, we wanted to prototype this one. We just never, just other things took priority. But I'd say another really cool thing that we talked about with this, and this is pretty neat. Like I said, some of these things aren't, kind of noticeable at first. Instead of being shot down the three-way, basically we have this, of course you would insert everything here, but basically you have this end cap in a sense. And the way that everything's angled so that it actually vents out at these side angles. But actually you could never we were worried about if you were to take a shot down this.
especially with the way this one works. So if it were, depending if it was a swing or a hinge, you could, the shaft could be in position. Let's see, it would be with a hinge. So if you're at rest between shots, you got hit right at the end of the three-way, theoretically, you could have ingress of paint, dirt, whatever. They could get to this point, and then once you cycle a three-way, you could have the feed air from the LPR blowing debris down into the ram, in essence.
Yeah,
so we reworked the front here, so there's no possibility of ingress. Like Gant was pointing out, the ports are off the side, and it's theoretically still possible to get something in there, but it's more torture.
Sure.
It's less.
I mean, right. There's only so much you can do at the end of the day, but
so that was probably one of the flaws with this design. The other concern I had was just the thinness of the
for sure
inside here.
Definitely.
I mean, because the three-way rod is exposed, you can bump it with your finger.
Measurement-wise, it was a very, very small diameter.
Yeah. This is the smallest here, at least in this design. Yeah, it's 20,000. It's really thin.
I can't remember what the inside ID of the inside O-rings were. I can't remember. Were they
the O-ring size or the ID?
Yeah, the O-ring size. Well, we could talk about the ID, but I'm trying to think of what the O-rings were. Regardless, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, I still think this one might be pretty cool. But we kind of were like, this we thought would be an improvement of kind of what was. So we just kind of kept developing.
But like we do with a lot of our projects, we're like, we don't want to just kind of innovate on top of somebody else. How can we, if we were to start from scratch and had no idea of how to do a thing, how would we do it to be better, right? Because most innovations are somebody sees something and they improve it a little bit, right? But we were like, clean slate, how can we make the best three-way? And that's what kind of got some of the next two designs, is like, what are the challenges with a three-way? What are challenges with an autococker in general? Short stroking, chopping paint, long trigger. Like the old school cockers, you had to pull the trigger all the way through and all the way back. You get half stroke or short stroke it, right? And that's what kind of got us into the next designs. But are we done with this? We want to jump to the next one?
Yeah, I would say one other thing that we, and I think that Joshua will agree with me on this. Like, I mean, when we sit down to design, I mean, obviously we try to have a clean slate, and we try and, the hard part is you go after this stuff, and then of course you have costs, and you have this and this, and you start nicking away at all the little things that you want to do. And of course, unfortunately, that's just what you have to do sometimes. But we really try and look at it from, like Joshua was saying, like a clean slate. Hey, what is everything we want in this thing to be? I was going to point out, Joshua, one of the things, and you guys will see on the back end here, we have this kind of collar design. We're messing around with a lot of different collar designs right now. This one actually is more of a lock nut style, where you would use 2 Allen keys to just torque it down, no set screws. But I think, Joshua, one thing that we thought was really cool in this design, I think people would have appreciated, is kind of what other manufacturers have done, having the adjustability for the, I don't think it's a complete game changer, but I think being able to adjust the three-way through the front, it's very simple to do to set it up. Of course, we could have gone.
I think of your old WGP, was it the ticklers? They had the adjustable knob, or the Attktx and receptions where you stick a wrench in.
I think Dye does it too. Of course, we've also looked at the Tech T. I'm sure a lot of you guys as well. The Tech T is done from the back end. But anyways, I think that's one thing that we would have liked as well.
Yep. Cool. So yeah, then the next design is like, all right, how can we again improve on the three-way design, especially with how far like spool valves have come, and the clever things you do with shutting air off, turning air on. Do you want to do this design, or do you want to go to just our latest version of this design?
It's up to you. Completely up to you, Joshua.
So they in essence work the same. One's an unbalanced spool and the other one's a balanced spool. But the idea is the three-way shaft, or actually a shaft itself, doesn't cycle the gun. It moves the spool from one position to the other. I don't know if that's a good way to explain that, but yeah. So this one would be unbalanced, so if this were, and all of our three-way designs work in both a hinge and a slide trigger.
Good point. That was something that's very important, because depending on how far you go down these different roads, it may be fantastic for a slide frame, but it's not going to work in a hinge, which is the reverse direction. So that's really kind of another thing, that whatever we did, it had to work in both directions, right?
So again, this one was unbalanced, where air pressure was fed from the LPR through our center barb. It passed through the spool, and in this current position would be like a slide frame set up at rest. The pressure would toggle this inner spool to the back position, which would then direct the air out to one side of the ram right here. So from this barb to this barb. And then as you pull the trigger, what would happen is air pressure that's coming from the center barb through the hole in the spool would then act on the spool and switch positions, right? So what that does for you is you're less likely to short stroke a gun, because now
hold on, Joshua. Let me interrupt you here, because you're going to like this. What's the code name of this project?
Right now we're calling it Avalanche. We'll probably shop that a little more, but the idea is
that'll lead into what you're going to go into.
Right. The single snowflake, the teeniest amount of gas. Let me see if I grab this. Once this cycles, actually, and I'll jump to the other one, so we're not explaining this twice. This one's unbalanced, right? So that meaning pressure is always going to be at this end of the spool, but not this end. So once you cycle the three-way shaft, pressure jumps it here and cycles the other way. Our latest design, we think, is the best and has the shortest theoretical required trigger pull to cycle properly. Would be this design, and it's a balanced spool. And I'll kind of walk through it on this one versus the other one. So again, same thing. Air pressure comes in, center port feeds the spool. Depending on whether your swing or slide will dictate what position this is in. So swing, this would be somewhat forward. Air pressure would act on this end of the spool. So you have air pressure acting on the spool, and also going out through this gap here to whatever side of the ram that you have it connected to. So you pull the trigger, your gun fires. Once you get to this point, you trigger the avalanche, right? So it seals up this end, and then this end is allowed to feed pressure into the other end of the spool, which drives the spool the other direction, which switches your ram. Now, what that avalanche that Gant was saying is the air goes in, moves the spool. We basically built in dwell, right? So most three-ways, there's that point where it cycles one way or cycles the other. With ours, once it cycles one way, that return stroke shifts, the timing in essence shifts inside the three-way. So now you'd have to release it a lot further for the ram to cycle back. So again, that builds in some dwell, some short stroke insurance, if you will, right? And then the other thing that does as well is now, because the cycle forward point in the trigger pull is further forward, now when you're releasing the trigger, the sear's getting further up before the gun cycles forward. So theoretically, you have better sear engagement, less likely to get lug skip. Like most guns, you can get to lug skip.
Theoretically.
Yeah. We still got to do a bunch of testing and some prototyping on this. That we're hesitant to show this today. It's like, we haven't really fully tested this. We want to show it. I was like, well, the cat's kind of out of the bag. We already said something about it, but theoretical. So any gun, well, most guns that have advanced timing on the trigger, if you were to release the trigger slowly, you can get it to lug skip, right? The ram comes forward before the sear plate's up, or whatever sear lug's up, or what, depending on the frame. What this does is it doesn't cycle forward. It's kind of like the old school guns that had the slot in the trigger plate, right? There was some
delay
in the ram coming forward and the sear getting up before the ram actually did. This kind of does the same thing. Benefits. You get a little more dwell in there. Hopefully it's less short strokeable. Also, I think the overall trigger pull, like the Attktx gun build we have has about 2 millimeter trigger pull. I'm thinking we can get this
which
down
has
there.
a Delta ZFR, has a gunfighter,
lightweight, Angry's lightweight hammer.
I can't remember which one. Were you running? I'm sorry. What three-way were you running? Inception, or were you running a bomb?
It's got an right now as an Inception three-way and an Inception ram.
Mm-hmm.
And regular. It has the whole Inception front end, but so because we're putting that gap in there in return, we're basically, instead of having that travel at the back of your trigger pull, it's almost wrapped around, put in front, right? So now I think you can get it sub 2 millimeter trigger pull, better sear engagement. Our fat barbs, you get lower operating pressure theoretically. There's a bunch of features there.
I wanted to point out a couple other cool things that it's hard to see in this cutaway, but just so you guys understand, it's actually the body is a 3-piece design. So you have a main center section, and then you have the back cap that threads into the front block, and then you also have a front cap. Couple cool things is, if you guys can see right near the center barb, Joshua, kind of highlight the 2 little slits there. Remember, these little gaps where those O-rings are running 360 degrees. So as soon as that spool crosses and opens up that 360 degree gap, that's how the air is flowing up and out. So I know people are asking that question.
Yeah. So to Gan's point, air comes into the center port, fills the center body section here, and then in here there's where the main body, the back and the front thread in, there's a small gap that airflow will go through, right? So that's what helps reduce the amount of travel of the trigger. This is only
one thing we should do, Joshua, is calculate. It'd be interesting to know what that full diameter of that.
Oh, so I dictated that gap based off our larger port size.
Oh, the larger port. Okay.
So it's equal to or greater than the port size. So we've optimized that flow all the way through the system, right?
Yeah. The other really cool thing is that as far as 3 pieces, I think as far as maintenance wise, it's going to be pretty neat. So imagine this is on your front block, and basically what you can do, and actually if you can complete the rest of the design, you can do it that way too. What I was going to say is you could unscrew the front cap, pull out the spool while it's already on the gun, go ahead and lubricate the O-rings on the spool, and just put a little bit of grease on the inside and outside, and then slide the spool back in. And that should probably be good enough that you can kind of, get the lubrication on the inside shaft. So the other really cool thing too is, being a 3-piece design, you're probably going to have some opportunity to, we could have it all one color. We could, mix and match. We could have, a different front and back sections. But yeah, I think as far as maintenance wise, that's going to be the really cool way to do that.
What Gan's referring to is these 3 sections, right? So your main body, and then your front and rear caps theoretically could be anodized differently if you want to mix and match colors or whatever.
From a design standpoint too, we tried, you can see, like, back to our cocking rod, we had some kind of design cues so that they, like Josh was saying, not only had the actual purchase to be able to get your fingers on there and screw it off, but they also kind of had some cues. Then some of these parts tried to match. How many holes are in the vents? I mean,
right now it's excessive. I don't know if we'll need this, but there's 12 port. This is probably beyond required needs for venting gases.
True. But we're going to have a lot of venting.
We haven't discussed the second half of the airflow, right? So when the spool shuttles and routes air from the inlet from the LPR, it goes through the slot, feeds the barb, but when it cycles back the other direction, the barb feeds down through into this area and then out through our ports. So good flow out of the design as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as far as material wise, like I said, we're looking at some different things as far as the coupler. We got a lot of different ideas coupler wise. There's some cool stuff that can be done. This is just kind of just mocked up on there for the time being. But as far as material wise, obviously aluminum on the outer parts, probably aluminum on the piston there. Excuse me, not the piston. And as far as the inner shaft, probably maybe a stainless or something. I mean, we could do different things, but I don't know.
Really, we're just looking for, a brass might be an option just because it's smooth and self-lubricating. But everything's on O-rings really, so as long as there's a good finish on either, this piece probably will most likely be aluminum as long as we got a good polish on there so that the cycles smoothly.
Yeah, right. The other interesting thing, Joshua, is, and we talk about this all the time, and it'll be interesting to hear what you guys think. And like I said, it's going to be really cool to kind of hear some of your opinions. And, obviously there's a lot of great feedback out there. But, the debate of what O-rings to use, right? Do you use an off the shelf? Well, we want all of them to be off the shelf, but there's certain performance gains that you can do as far as metric O-rings. It's always it's a trade-off. What's your thought, Joshua?
Yeah, no, part of it was the size of the O-ring, because we're trying to minimize the required travel of this assembly. I think to cycle, this only required, I did the math a minute ago. It was really short. It seems like it was only like 35 thousandths was required to cycle. So as long as you get the sear release set in that first part, you need at least 35. Now, again, some of that can overlap with the sear release, but again, it should be really short. My mind, at least based off the one build I did here, whoops, I just zoomed all the way up. I feel like I can get a sub 2 millimeter trigger pull, or imperial that would be like a 1/16 of an inch probably, or less trigger pull. So you start getting into like the mech gun, your EMAC, GMAC, CS3 with mech frame. What's the frame on the Lux? I forget what they call that one.
The Idol or the Adrenaline? Adrenaline?
Yeah. Do they make just the mech frame, or somebody else make a mech frame for the Luxes?
I think Adrenaline made the frame, and then I think that Lux kind of used some of it as well, other than the timer and stuff. But I think they're kind of just co-developed. But
yeah, so ideally, we want to see autoclockers up there throwing paint down like the new space age mech guns. Right?
Well, one of our dreams and one of our goals early on was to make the badass Delta ZFR have a badass three-way, and the combination of those two. So, I mean, we haven't told a lot of you guys, but we've also so in the Delta ZFR, when we were designing that, kind of a funny story. Actually, the three-way is very similar as well. But when Joshua and I are doing these things, like we'll have something 80, 85, 90% done, and then somebody will throw out an idea, and it's like, oh gosh, now we've got to, the debate then comes, hey, do you move forward with what you have, or do you pursue this really cool new idea? To Joshua's credit, as far as the Delta ZFR, we had all these cool features in it, and at the last minute, Joshua was like, hey, I really think we could start manipulating the back end.
Technically, it was like, hey, I know we're about to make prototypes, and I hate to say this because I don't want to move us out, delay us any, but 100%. What if?
But you know what? That delayed us probably 6 months with that trigger, because what ended up happening was we started to manipulate the back end there, as far as the back end of the Delta ZFR, how quickly it acted on the whole linkage for the sear. And when we started playing with that, I mean, the point that I'm trying to get at, you guys, is on this particular, the angle that we have here, the 20%, we actually, we tested triggers all the way up to 50%. And I mean, the trigger pull is just it's like it's unlike anything you've ever shot on an autococker. I mean, it's so like you're kind of, when you're shooting the autococker and everything's actuating, it's like this is a mech gun, like it's kind of weird. But the only challenge is the sear break is a little bit harder. But our hope with how kind of like the balanced valves and the lower operating pressure and the lower spring force and kind of, what all these different companies have done, hopefully that can kind of be reduced. But the point is, if we can, if we can really make a cool three-way, if we can start also releasing some Delta ZFRs with like, I don't know, maybe 40, 45 degree. Yeah.
Yeah. What Gant's referring to is the ramp angle here. So a typical trigger has a flat face. So the input's pretty linear. When you start increasing the angle of this, you increase the speed at which these linkages move, right? How fast the sear drops out, which also means the weight or the feel of the trigger increases, right? Because it's doing more work, because that roller sear is going up the face of this ramp right here. So like Gant said, we tested everything from, well, obviously the stock plate 0, but 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Once you start getting 50, 55, the angle's too great, and this springs struggle to return the sear plate.
Well, hold on. Let me clarify that. It was really ridiculously fast to shoot, but if you didn't want to feel that sear break, you might, and you like to. I mean, but then again, everybody likes something different. But it was something really
snap, right. Like there was like a heavy break, but it was short. right?
Sure.
Well, when I
Exactly.
say heavier than say a 20.
Heavier than you were used to.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the zero plate. Well, again, relative
Right.
to a 0 degree plate or the stock. Well, I shouldn't say stock because the stock gunfighter. Well, that might be just due to spring selection or whatever, right? But
Correct.
with light springs, with a low degree plate or a 0 degree plate versus a high degree plate, that's probably how we should describe it, right?
Yeah.
A high degree plate versus a low degree plate with the same springs and whatever, you could feel more snappy trigger pull or more snappy sear release, I guess you could say.
Well, as far as the Delta ZFR, and look, we hope you guys kind of enjoy some of this stuff and like some of the kind of the design decisions and some of the stuff that we struggle with. It's like we spend tons of times on this stuff and, agreeing, disagreeing, talking through, testing, 3D printing, prototyping, all this stuff. But the point is, we didn't know that, like, hey, like this is really cool when you start really manipulating this angle. I mean, it's so short, but are people going to like that? And then vice versa. It's like, well, we need to do something because it's a really cool feature. So we kind of settled on, hey, let's start with 20. It's a, you can definitely feel how much, and that's been very cool to see too. When people put the Delta ZFR into their trigger, they instantly know how much shorter that it feels. You know what I mean? So just imagine when we start manipulating more of that angle. But yeah, this was the Delta ZFR was a cool project.
Yeah.
So let's see, three-way wise. Yeah, I mean, obviously we got a lot of prototype work and different things to do like that. I mean, obviously the first thing is you want to conceptually make sure that theoretically what you have on screen is going to work. And then of course you move through those different phases. And look, sometimes you learn something isn't what you want, or you learn like, hey, like we could do this better. And hopefully that, we can do all of that. Kind of what Josh was messing with right there too. We were able to re-add that front broach there so that you could easily set up the three-way as normal. But trying to think, is there anything else you want to touch on in this design, Joshua?
No, I think we talked about the bigger hoses, the bigger barbs. We've talked about the
flow path,
the spool, and our avalanche feature that builds in that. Yeah, again, it's kind of funny. There's the old autocockers had that delay kind of built into the trigger plate with the slot, but the way that was done, it made your trigger pull really long, right? But yeah, it'll be cool. We're looking forward to getting the prototype for this and really testing it out.
Definitely. I'd say that from a
here's definitely gonna be interesting. There's been a lot of innovation with three ways between Nova and the one that Angry just teased.
Nova's done some cool stuff for sure. And of course, I saw that one that Angry and I think Jordan Martin did, which is very cool. Look, in WGP coming back, I think it's, I think it's awesome.
Second Renaissance or whatever you call it.
Hey, this is the third Renaissance. I don't know, but hey, look, we support other manufacturers, other companies. At the end of the day, it's all paintball. The more people that can build and play with autocockers. I'll tell you another cool thing, especially with the Twister project. I can't believe how many people's comments that I saw that look like, I don't even know how to build an autococker, but I love this and I want to learn. And look, I mean, we already talk to a lot of you guys online every day anyway. So, I mean, if you guys ever have any questions or anything that we can help with, by all means, because look, the bottom line is we all started somewhere. I mean, me personally, look, hanging out with guys like Mark Davis, Doc Fire, all these guys, any one of these builders who has done stuff for a long time, you can learn something new that you didn't do, or a different way, or just a better approach. But look,
tools.
What's that?
Or so I'll try this tool. I'm like, I need to get one of those.
Oh no, definitely. The other thing I would say too is, look, you've got to screw some stuff up to learn, right? Like when I was younger, I could always shoot an autococker. I just never knew how to build one, but I always kind of I respected the guys who could. And of course the Danny Loves and all these guys and the Barney and all these people at the field. But I wanted to learn, and you have to learn to mess some things up and you take that and you dissect that section and you figure it out. And eventually you'll learn how to do it. And when you can put together your own autococker and shoot it, it's just the coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, let's see. Well, we've got some cool stuff we're working on. I mean, hopefully we can show off some cool stuff. I got a really cool thing here, but I don't really want to kind of show you guys that. let's see. So all the different chambers we have here. Yeah, so we've probably given away. Oh, so we got the Lazarus valve screws. Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of parts so far. So yeah, I mean, we're just having fun. We're learning a lot along the way. And look, guys, at the end of the day, when you talk about Attktx, you're looking at it right here. It's Joshua, myself, his wife, and my wife. That's it, right? So when you're online asking a question, it's one of us, right? When you're seeing a product, we've designed that, right? Everything. I mean, we hope to grow this thing and continue to make great products and do innovative stuff. But look, I just want to say we appreciate you guys' patience, and we're just happy to be making parts and to be involved in paintball, right? So
something we're both passionate about and been doing it for decades. Saw a meme the other day. I'm old enough to remember when snakes look like snakes. I was like, crap.
I saw this.
that was me, son of a gun.
I saw one. It was the same meme, and it was like, what did it say? It said, it's like, back in my day, the Bob Long Intimidator Raptor. I can't remember what it was. It's like, sure, Grandma, let's take you to bed or something like that. It was funny. But anyways, as far as so we're laser focused on the Headband Heroes. There's a ton of assembly in Headband Heroes, you guys. I can't wait to get these things out here. We developed 4 sizes of these things. You guys have seen them. We've got 200 plus people who are waiting on Headband Heroes. So you guys, please be patient. There's a lot of assembly in these. There's a lot of details that we haven't shared as well. Some cool stuff.
Like Gant pointed out, I mean, I've been in and around the paintball community. So has Gant for years and years and years. But even still, with our experience, we're learning lots. Like, it's like, oh crap, we forgot. You got to count for holidays. Oh crap.
Yeah. So, I mean, all this stuff is a lot of work, you guys, and we're doing our best to make new stuff, make cool stuff, have great customer service. We're trying to be as available as we can, and your guys' compliments about hey, this is really cool and this is unique. I mean, that stuff means a lot to us. And like I said, hopefully this next year we can start doing some. It'd be cool to go to some NXLs. It'd be cool I'd love to go to some big games. I think that'd be really neat. So, we have a lot of plans, and we appreciate you guys kind of coming along for the ride. So is anything else you want to kind of touch on, Joshua?
Who was it your buddy was talking about? Oh, you couldn't talk about this part. I wish we could tell you about all the other stuff we've been working on as well. There's a bunch out there.
That's the hard part. I would say that Headband Hero is going to be really freaking cool. There's a lot of cool Headband Hero stuff. We're talking with a lot of different people about Headband Hero stuff. I would say that we've got some cool ideas in the pipeline. There's one that we've been working on for a while that I think you guys are really going to like. But of course, with having we were humbled to. Are we talking too much about all this, or hopefully they enjoy kind of watching all this or kind of learning about it? But we were absolutely humbled to be involved in the Twister project. I mean, when Anthony reached out to us, it was like, hey guys, I really like your stuff. Maybe we can work on designing some parts together for the new Twister. And I kind of told Joshua, I was like, dude, like how freaking we were very humbled by that. We're still humbled by it, and to be involved in that project and kind of be a part of the F6, that was super cool. And to be a small company.
One of our first 2 products, the chambers, right? Like designing the chambers, him liking the chambers, our window was kind of like a in passing idea when we were putting together our first prototype that Anthony liked and incorporated in which you can only really do with our gold chamber with the O-ring location. Be able to do it's cool. Like you think about all the old autocockers with the slot window cuts, and it's just.
Oh, you're talking about the window cut? Yeah, the window cut I think is cool. I think
we nicknamed it our Mac mod. So 11/16 and then window it. We're calling it the McClellan Mackley Mac mod.
Yeah, somehow our last names end up with the first several syllables the same.
It wasn't because of our names. It was modular air chamber. We're like, hey, it's our name.
Sure. So yeah, that's a whole.
We're not that egotistical. We're like, it's the Mac. No, it's the modular because it was a two-piece chamber.
Naming all this stuff and keeping up with all the terminology. That's a lot too. But I'd say as far as the Mac Mod 2. The Twister logo for those of you guys who are going to be watching this for the F6. Side note, F6 wise, we're probably going to do a pre-order for the cocking rod, the Twister cocking rod, as well as the Beaver tail. And of course, if we can have everything else ready by that time as well, you guys are, welcome to hop on that. But I think we really need to know how many people are going to want those specific things for the Twister project. But I'm sorry, Joshua, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, no, I was just, no, I was going to try and zoom in on the Twister parts and
okay.
zoomed out.
So anyways, you guys really want to appreciate
the Twister knobs and the Twister parts in essence. If anybody wants anything for their F6 is what you're referring to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I even forgot too. There's the LPX. So
oh yeah.
So the LPX there, that's an extension to kind of, this is another important thing, you guys. Sorry, we're all over the place, and this is probably longer than some of you guys wanted to watch, but the length of the actual LPC, we actually mimicked it to be very close to the length of a Attktx LPR. So maybe take that into consideration. We have to see kind of all the lengths of whatever pneumatic that you want to use. But we designed the LPX to be a additional upgrade to the Attktx because they use the ram tube as far as the LPC chamber. You can screw that on and you can get somewhere. I don't have my Attktx with me, but I can show you guys. But a lot of people ordered that or pre-ordered that. So those will be. Those were supposed to be done Friday, but I know for sure that they're finishing Wednesday. So those will all be ready to roll. And what else? I really hope that you guys kind of give us your feedback and your comments on some of this stuff. You guys have already sent a lot of stuff. Charles Bird brought up the idea to, hey, make a stainless steel cocking rod knob, which I think is going to be cool. I think we need to do that as well. One other thing, Joshua, I don't know if you read this. It's something that we can look at. The hard part is when people are like, hey, make this.
Are you talking about the curved mounting block, or was there another?
Well, there was that, but also they were talking about making our three-way, the end caps, as long as we proof everything out. Doing the Twister.
Twister features on the, oops, there we go. The Twister features on the front parts of the, we could theoretically do that.
If there's enough Twister people that want to commit to something like that, we'd be all in to help them do something like that.
Yeah. So these two would theoretically could have a Twister kind of.
Even I think the front cap, like I think if we did, I think the front cap. I think you'd have to do the front cap for sure. I think that'd be really neat. And especially those matched lines with that with the LPC is going to look awesome.
What was the? You can edit this later if you want, but who was it that was doing the crazy long?
Shannon. Warham. Excuse me if I butchered that, Shannon. But yeah, I told Shannon that dude gives us a lot of laughs, man. Like he made the LPC that's like 12 inches long.
Right. Well, funny coincidence though, if you flip the low pressure chamber and throw it on a Attktx, you could.
Sure, you could.
You could stack.
Well, you could stack them. 100%. You could stack them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So you could buy a bunch of LPXs and actually just keep going with it. Which
I'm saying, if we were to sell this part separately, you could stack these two with the Attktx. It's the same thread as the.
Oh, true.
As the LPX, the Twister body and our other body are threaded the same, so you could flip it and run it on a Attktx. And who's bigger?
Well, he grabbed multiple, so he might already have that going. But anyways,
he was already planning on doing it.
Kind of wrapping up here. Love to hear you guys' feedback on any of this. Like, of course, the AUTOCOCKER community is all about feedback, and so anything that you guys want to share with us or kind of ideas that you have or kind of this you want to see, by all means, we're always open ears. Can't remember the other thing that I was going to say. What else do you guys want to see from us? What other stuff do you want to see? Would you like to see Attktx make? We're always open to hear that as well. So anyways, Joshua, we've probably talked for too long, but I hope that we can kind of start doing more of this. I don't know. We'll have to figure out how you do this live and do the streaming and have the screen. We're learning a lot of that as well. But hopefully we can start doing more of that and kind of give you guys more insight into what we're thinking about when we're designing this stuff. And it's always cool to know more details about it.
Yep. No, it's like Ant said, it's been fun. It's been humbling. It's been Exciting to see how well received stuff has been. So yeah, we're looking forward to this next year. I mean,
cool.
we launched 8 months ago is when we kind of first came out with products. Yeah, it was like May, June. It was on Super Game. Oregon
About
Super
seven, little over 7 months. Side
Yeah.
note, hopefully maybe we'll make it to Super Game this year. That'd be super cool.
Well, and there's the one in
As
Florida.
long as it doesn't rain and cold.
Well, we should probably avoid the Oregon ones because it always rains there. Well, I've been to a lot of them. It seems like more times than not it rains, but yeah, they just had the Florida ones going on this weekend right now. Past weekend. Yeah,
I actually didn't even know that the Super Game. I thought Super Game was just in Oregon.
It was up until a few years ago.
It
was just Oregon, but now they have 4 of them spread out. So Florida, there's one up. Oh crap! I should just pull it up before I get it wrong. But yeah, there's 4 different Super Games. So that one and the other mech events. Was it Fulda Gap? And there's a bunch that we want to try and get to. We think it'd be cool to get out.
I was telling Joshua, I've actually never played a big game in all these years. Really want to get out and play some video games, strap some GoPros on and go play. And you know what, man?
It's fun. It's more recreational. It's more kickback. It's more about hanging out with friends. Like say, I really 100%. Got into it because I worked for Spec Ops way back in the day, and they were all, scenario, big game stuff. So I really got into that aspect of paintball back then when I was working for them. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun. You get to hang out with friends. It's not so much structured. It's not so much high pressure. It's just fun.
Definitely. And that's the hard part too. Is I mean, obviously I love the tournament scene. It can consume you and it can lock you in, and it's just it's just a part of the nature, competition, and which is super cool. But man, I was thinking the other day and just kind of looking around, there are so many cool fields that when all of this is said and done one day, I want to have said that I or we or my friends have played on that field, right? Like there are so many cool fields in California, like, they're just cool fields all over Canada. I mean, I'd love to get a chance to hopefully one day, Joshua, we can get out to hopefully have a booth and get out and play some of these things. And
yeah, for sure.
I think the ultimate goal would be to one day have our own gear and our own equipment to be able to go out there and not only enjoy it, but to see people playing with it. But anyways, all right, you guys, appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you guys got something out of this. And again, if you guys have anything, please reach out to us, and hopefully we'll check you out on the next time.